This show is proudly sponsored by TraderCobb.com, the leaders in checklist-based trading strategy. Yes, that's exactly how it sounds. I'll teach you a literal checklist so you can tick off items and be decisive very quickly. Get across to TraderCobb.com where there's a bunch of free content there for you to have a look at. And of course, if you're interested in having me come to your city, click and register for the live events coming up and filling fast. Have a great day. Visit TraderCobb.com now.
The Trader Cobb Crypto Show, talking business in blockchain.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Trader Cobb Crypto Show. Today I have a returning guest in Michaela Juric. She is the Bitcoin babe, has an amazing story which you may or may not be privy to. We're joined here with her to talk about what's going on across the Bitcoin market. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me again.
Look, a lot has changed, okay?
Yes.
You have been operating on local Bitcoins for years, right?
Yes, 5 years this week, actually.
5, okay. So look, for those that don't know, local Bitcoins is a place you can buy and sell or trade Bitcoin globally. And it was probably the easiest way, perhaps, back in the early days to actually transact. It wasn't as simple as just going and putting your credit card in and sending money across and bam. It was a lot more difficult back in those days. And Michaela's been there from those days. Why has it recently changed?
Because local Bitcoins has decided they don't want to be local anymore, and out of nowhere decided they were going to cancel everyone's cash transactions.
Right. So what did that mean for your business?
Well, for me personally, I didn't see much of a change because cash transactions were kind of a falling trend anyway, because we were seeing a lot of people moving to online methods, just out of, convenience. But in terms of countries where, debanking or, the inability to actually hold a bank account is, quite difficult. The whole, deleting local cash trades as a payment method really hurt them.
What was the reason for doing it?
We didn't actually get a reason initially. Oh. So as you do, you just wake up one morning and your cash trades are gone. You're just like, oh, okay, fair enough. So the reason didn't come until about a week later, and it was actually to do with the regulatory climate. So apparently, so local Bitcoins are now come under the European regulatory stuff.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yep.
A whole bunch of mess there. But I believe it's just been sort of thrown in the too hard basket. And so it was just easier for local Bitcoins to pretty much just destroy local cash trade listings.
Because you've been one of the biggest brokers in Australia. I know we've got a global audience here. We're just talking to this particular country, which is becoming, especially in New South Wales, which Michaela is in New South Wales, are very much a nanny state. It's becoming very much a joke. But what was it around the KYC that the first issues started to arise? I mean, back in the day, I could rock up to your place for 100 grand with a suitcase and you give me a Trezor or a Ledger or whatever wallet you want to have, and you give me the Bitcoin, right?
Right. That's exactly how it worked.
So I could be very anonymous, and I could be a drug dealer. I could be a money launderer. I could be all these different things. But when did it change to KYC and AML?
When Austrac stepped in, who were our lovely government regulatory body, which was April 2018.
Okay. So as far as crypto is concerned, it's not new.
No. It's been over 12 months now. Yeah.
Okay. Now, asking about your client, I suppose, did you see, April 2018, I went to New York in May and we were bouncing around, I think 9 to 10,000 back then in May of 2018. We just had the big come off, and then we saw the bounce of January, then the come off again. And there was still optimism in New York when I was at Consensus, but obviously we saw it come off a lot further. Mm-hmm. Did you see the willingness to use your service as a broker, where you can actually speak to a person to do your deals? Did you see it drop at that stage due to KYC?
Yeah, absolutely.
Due to the market?
Oh, absolutely. Because essentially what happened was with KYC and running KYC as a part of a crypto business, 18 months ago, you were really just doing it out of due diligence. So it was really just to stop fraud. There was no real, I guess, need to do, AML, CTF checks, right? Because, obviously you would do that from an ethical standpoint. Like, obviously, as a trader, I don't want to be selling Bitcoin to somebody that wants to deal drugs or promote kiddie porn or something like that. But yeah, like, lost where I am now.
Where's your issue lie? I mean, is it in the KYC or is it in the
Yes. So, okay,
Bitcoin?
For example, like where we're in a very digital world already, very digital space, we can track where bank transfers are going and everything else. Nowadays, with the verification and the KYC checking, if you wanted to sell, say, $10 worth of Bitcoin for me to go and pay your bank, like your phone bill for you, you would have to go through the same KYC rigmarole as if you were going to buy $100,000 worth of cash, worth of Bitcoin with cash. And I think, and that's where there's this massive discrepancy, because it's like, why is that so aggressive? It's essentially like, asking for everything by your blood now.
Look, I can see both sides of it, though, Michaela. I mean, if like, for example, if I'm going to go and get a phone bill, if I'm going to go and get a phone, I'm going to fill out paperwork. I'm going to give them my payment details. They're going to check my credit score. I have to do that, but you only do it once.
Yes.
Same thing with you, right? If someone wants to pay $10 worth of bills or $70 or $100,000 or buying Bitcoin or whatever, it's the same process. You do it once and then it's on the record. Is that correct?
You do it. See, it depends on service to service, because Austrax, they don't really provide recommendations, but there is sort of a industry standard that you're supposed to do it every 12 months, 2 years. But if the customer isn't changing their information, well, then there's really no point in checking it again. The information doesn't change.
So do you have to do each year? Let's go. We've just finished here in Australia a financial year a few days ago. Does that mean that if a client comes back to you, and let's say it falls in that year period, right, that 12-month period, whatever it starts and finishes, does that mean they need to update their details, or is it only just the same as a phone bill? When you move, you update?
Well, if the customers move, then they would have to contact me and let me know. Essentially, like your bank. Like if you move, house, then you'd have to say to your bank, "Hey, look, I've changed address, so you send my statements here."
Yeah.
So we're essentially expected to do the same thing. But really, I don't really see the point, considering it's all an online environment anyway. Like, it doesn't matter if you're here or in Perth, like you're still going to be receiving that crypto to the same spot. So
I'm doing the side to side head because I can see both sides of it, right? I understand the digital nature of our space, yeah, and the address means very little to the transaction, very little to the seller, very little to the buyer. Once they're confirmed as who they are who they are. They've passed their checks and they're now on the system.
Right.
The area that I see as the head nod either side is that, if I want to, let's say I do something wrong and I'm a fugitive, I'm not going to give you my address. They want to have it updated. So therefore, if I don't have a fixed place of address, and let's say I just robbed a bank and pulled $4 million out of the back of a Brinks car or whatever, I've got $4 million cash. Now I want to turn that into Bitcoin so I can go anywhere in the world. Because it's very difficult to jump on a plane with $4 million cash, I would suspect. I've never tried that. But, that is the easiest way for them to escape things they have done in their past. So why would there be an issue with that, to deal with people like you who are a broker, who help people, hold their hand, walk them through the process? Why should that be an issue for your clients?
I think because there was a certain expectancy of anonymity when people came in and dealt with brokers, as opposed to traditional services like, CoinJar, CoinTree, all those sorts of things, which are predominantly online services. So, when you're sort of dealing with cash and crypto, like I said, there's a certain expectation of privacy, and that information wasn't going to get sold or passed on to, the ATO or anything else. Because now that's all starting to get cracked down on as well, with the whole reporting to the ATO and the ATO doing their data acquisitions and data nets and everything else. And they're going around and trying to find people who have purchased Bitcoin and haven't claimed it on their tax returns. So.
But here's my conundrum, okay? And I'm not trying to be annoying, but here's my conundrum. Those that hold crypto want their crypto to go up, right?
Yeah.
They do.
Absolutely.
We're all speculators in this space for a lack of a better word. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Some people want to change the world. I'm all for that. But
Yep.
we are also speculators, and it's changed a lot of people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
But if that is to be the case, then we need to bring in new money. And the only way we can bring that new money, this is where I've got not an issue, but a question mark around how much people understand of how financial markets work and how moves work within markets based off the back of money coming in. If there's no regulation around it, then it's not a legitimate market. Therefore, you do not get those hordes and masses. So what would you prefer to give up? Your privacy or your money?
Look, yeah, that's a tough question. But this is the thing though, you talk about the regulatory environment that's supposed to legitimize, Bitcoin and crypto and everything else. I can tell you now that, coming through and, having to register with AUSTRAC and having to go through the same rigmarole as what a bank would has changed nothing on the banking situation here in Bitcoin. So we're still having bank accounts shut down. We're still having transactions that are getting reversed for no reason. I think it's all fine and good to have new money brought into the system, but if you can't get that money into crypto, by the use of a bank account, like what's the point?
I get that. I totally. There's no reason a bank should dictate how you spend your money. I'm all for that, and I applaud cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, as the major one, for the ability for us to do that. But I also understand that as a trader and someone who spent 13 years in financial markets, that from my point of view, and not everyone needs to agree with me. I'm not here to be friends with everybody or to agree with everybody. From my point of view, what I see is that the conversation is typically, we want the market to go up, more or less. How do we make that market go up? And the other thing is, the biggest thing is, Bitcoin's an inclusive environment. Everyone's welcome. Everyone can buy some Bitcoin except for you and you and you and you and you, because you're already wealthy and you don't get any. So there's still this big disparity between the haves and the have-nots and the egos of certain individuals, which is like, if you want to be inclusive, be inclusive. You are going to have to deal with some regulation if you want this market to step to the next level. There's too many big businesses in this space that require that. Now, Bitcoin can still be relatively anonymous if you got it a while back. And there are ways around it. I'm sure. I've got no idea. I run businesses that do all our taxes, do everything legitimately. And I've got no problem with that. So I don't have that anarchism bone in my body. I'm not so concerned about that. But I wasn't somebody who got into it through anarchy. You know what I'm saying? That there seems to be a seesaw that won't meet in the middle.
Yeah, and I think that's what the problem is going to be, because I think I think there needs to be some form of a regulatory environment in this, and that's to stop, bad things happening and it being treated as, like I said, in the terms of anarchy. But I think if you come too hard with the regulation like they have here, what you're going to essentially find is that you're going to create like this black market and this underworld of Bitcoin trading, where you've got people that are just doing these, one-off cashies and all around the place. And it's essentially going to create like like I said, an underground Bitcoin market, which the government won't be able to track, be it, AUSTRAC, ATO, they're not going to be able to track that kind of stuff, especially if we're talking crypto, cash, like it's going to become very dangerous.
Right?
Sorry?
That market already exists, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It already exists, and this is the thing. Like, if they're not going to do
on the map,
hey,
that's what put Bitcoin on the map.
Well, I won't go into that stuff. I've never done anything illegal before. I'm a good girl.
But you know what I mean? Like, I'm sort of sitting in between both camps. I've got one foot in each. I'm agnostic. It is what it is. I hold my opinions. I hold my views. But for me, it's a market. That's what it is. It's a market, and some people like me for that. Some people don't. I don't really mind who does and who doesn't. I'm who I am, and I operate the way I operate, and you're not going to change me.
Yep.
I don't want to change the next person, right? We have our own belief systems. We have our own ideals. I suppose I might be looking at it too much from a market and business point of view, and less from the whole social freedom point of view. I support the social freedom. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see that. But I also believe that we do need to have some form of structure in our society, given if we're going to trade a shell for a shell, whether it be a Bitcoin or a dollar or a euro or a sterling pound, we are going to be in trade. Now, if we're going to be in trade, there needs to be some kind of governance. Otherwise, we go back to a period of which it is the Wild West, and crypto is called the Wild West for many, many reasons. I, for one, champion regulation, but I need to make sure that when I say that, it's also with a caveat.
Yeah.
Don't try and stop it. Don't overdo it. And I think the Australian Tax Office, the ATO especially, around the tax, man, it's hard work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, at the same time, like for example, you know, you come to me, you want to sell $100 worth of Bitcoin to me. You know, you have to go through these ID checks and everything else. Now, what happens if you wanted to go out for dinner? You know, take your lovely partner out for dinner, and you want to pay with Bitcoin? Do you have to go through those same ID checks?
Well, to get the credit card, yeah.
Well, no. If you wanted to pay for that dinner with Bitcoin, would you have?
What's the difference between paying with Bitcoin and paying with money in my bank with a card? That's what I'm trying to work myself out around here.
Well, I realize that, but what I'm saying is like when you're dealing with me as a broker, as opposed to using your Bitcoin
as a transaction. Yeah. Okay. Well, you act as the bank in that case, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I want to have Bitcoin on my application on my phone, and this said restaurant wants to accept that Bitcoin, then I need to get it there somehow onto that wallet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have to go through you, and it might be $500 or $100 as the example state.
Mm-hmm.
So I go through you with $100, do the KYC and the AML, which will take X amount of whatever time.
Yep. Then
I'm good to go, right? You can issue me that. It's all on record. It's all good. And then I can go and pay for my lunch or my dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm trying to get my head around, right? Because I don't need to do a KYC to pay for dinner with Bitcoin.
Right.
Just the same as I don't need to fill out forms and register with the bank to pay for a lunch.
Mm-hmm.
There's a stepping stone. That stepping stone is the intermediary, which you're the bank in the bank's case, and the bank is in most people's cases. Mm-hmm. What is the difference?
Well, in terms of governance and everything, there's really no difference. Like we're all essentially the same thing.
So what's the problem?
So what's the problem?
Yeah.
Well, because I think we're under the same regulatory pressure as banks.
So it's about freedom.
We're not, right, but we're not.
They don't cut you any slack.
We're given all the negatives, but not the positives.
Right, okay. That makes sense. And look, I'm not trying to grill you here, Michaela. I'm trying to understand it better from my own perspective because the thing is, you're not a bank. You're not worth $16 billion and turning over $9 billion a quarter or whatever. I guess the point I'm trying to reach is that they may be slowing down the internal marketplace, which is the vendors.
Mm-hmm.
You are. Like if we compare it to traditional markets, they can be a small broker house that, that broker might turn over 10 million a year in all total volume. And that's pretty small. Yeah.
Yep.
Now they're trying to stop you or slow you from having a similar type of business to what a broker would if I was broking as an individual in my office right now, calling my clients. Right.
Right.
And that was the shift.
Yes.
They're trying to shut you out, or they're just trying to make it difficult, or is it just the legislation?
Look, to be honest with you, I think it's a little bit of both in terms of trying to shut us out and legislation. Because when the legislation was first sort of brought out, in terms of so what I do, which is the peer-to-peer, the brokerage side of things through local Bitcoins, nobody from our side of the fence was, contacted or asked, what is your input on this? Can you give input on this?
Stamped.
Yeah, so which is essentially, so when all these regulatory things came out and they were just like, okay, you need to start, abiding to these rules. Well, as a trader that uses a service like local Bitcoins or any of the other ones, some of these rules were near impossible to abide by.
Got it.
So then when you go back to these regulators and you say, for example, with Austrac, and you say, hey, what am I meant to do about this part? I can't fulfill that. Does that just make me an illegal trader?
Yeah.
And it's not even they have the answers to give in those scenarios half the time. So you essentially for the past 18 months, we've all been living in this gray zone of, in fear of the government's going to come through any minute and shut us down.
Like the ABC.
Hey?
Like the ABC.
Exactly right. So, and I think where the concern is that you have the government's come through, they've regulated. If there's certain people that don't fit into that mold, it's sort of, like I said, you're going to get shut out. it's kind of like starting that same sort of environment as what we're seeing with the banks. You have big four banks, you have a few credit unions that are surrounded by that, and that's all that's been there for the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're now starting to see all these smaller pop-up banks that are coming through because they've eased that regulatory environment. But that's been like how long in the making? Decades. Do we have decades of time before we have 3 or 4 actual Bitcoin companies that are selling, and then we end up in this environment where, like I said, the big four banks, they own the majority of the market. I think with the regulation the way it's going, we're going to see that same thing happen.
Well, you know what? It took a little while, but that's what I wanted from you. I wanted to understand where it sat. I wanted to see the passion. We got that. I totally understand now. Like, I just couldn't get my head around, okay, well, it doesn't seem like such a big deal. It's like we're all used to doing that. But the way you've explained it here, it's more about, if you do a blanket ban, what you're doing is you're hurting small business. All right, you're hurting innovation. You're hurting, and what often when it comes to legislation and regulation, they just go, "Well, here's what we've done in the past." Whoosh, go across the board. It's like, well, I'm not going to my team of 6 QCs to go through the whole process to make sure that I'm, fitting in with the same legislation as the bank.
Exactly right.
I can't do that. So it's stifling innovation. It's stifling small business and creation within this sector. And as a country, Australia, for one, if we don't start to invest in technology in our future, well, I mean, coal's going to die. It's not going to last very long. I'm fearful for my children. So on that, I understand where you're coming from, and I thank you for your time. Okay, tell us where, if you want to buy a Bitcoin and you want someone to hold your hand or a part of a Bitcoin, where do we do that in Australia?
You would go to www.bitcoin-babe.com and you can check out where I'm offering my services now. It's still on local Bitcoins, but also available on local CoinSwap if you're interested in dealing in cash.
Excellent. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you as always, Michaela. And for those that are in Sydney, we have a crypto meetup happening in the West. And what are those dates, Michaela?
So that's on the 16th of July, which is between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. So that's for the first ever Western Sydney crypto meetup, which I will be hosting, and I will be joined by my fantastic guest of yours truly.
Yes, I will be there. I'll be talking all things, I don't know what, but definitely Bitcoin. Thank you so much for your time, Michaela, and look forward to seeing you at the Western Sydney, the first ever crypto meetup. Thank you very much for your time today, and have a fantastic day. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
This show is proudly sponsored by TraderCobb.com, the leaders in checklist-based trading strategy. Yes, that's exactly how it sounds. I'll teach you a literal checklist so you can tick off items and be decisive very quickly. Get across to TraderCobb.com, where there's a bunch of free content there for you to have a look at. And of course, if you're interested in having me come to your city, click and register for the live events coming up and filling fast. Have a great day. Visit TraderCobb.com now.